Hey everybody, this is Lady J. I'm on here with Pastor Shannon Wright, who is does somebody have the if you have me on in the background, y'all turn me off
I don't think so.
or Van turn me off because I can hear myself. Yeah. So anyway, everybody, we are on here. We're going to be doing some commentary because we know that there's a crisis going on with our Baltimore City public schools. And so we're going to be on here listening to the hearing that City Council has going on right now. They're talking about the crisis at the Augusta Fells Public School. And they've already said that we will not be allowed to ask any questions. We will not be allowed to comment. We will have to listen to what they're talking about. And they're going to explain some things about Augusta Fells and all of that. And I guess some of the debacles that are going on at the school system. So if you would like to be a part of this panel, I'm going to put the link in the comment. I'm also going to put the phone number on here. Let me go back and put the phone number on so you can actually call us. And we're going to be listening, and we're going to be giving our comments since we're not able to comment on the with the school since we can't ask any questions. We're going to do our own little commentary on here. So feel free. 443-297-4753 is a number that you can call us on. Or if you would like to come on the screen and be with us, I will definitely send you a link. And you can come on the screen and you can give your comments and you can be one of the commentators as well. So we have Pastor Shannon Wright, who's an advocate and who's out there fighting for the rights of our children, trying to get the school system back in shape. And we have Miss Van Green, who is a parent. And you have myself on here. So we're going to be talking and we're going to be listening to what they're saying. Okay? So I'm going to turn it up so everybody can hear. I turned it down for a minute.
Even when other districts in the state refused to decide, then ended up following her lead. We were national leaders around testing and vaccination. As a result of all that early work, we had a better understanding of how to prepare to return to in-person learning. We have now reached what the CEO has described as a tipping point.
Do we know who this is that's talking, Pastor Shannon?
Yes, the woman talking right now is the chairman of the board.
Okay.
Students facing a set of challenges unlike any that impacted previous generations. The steps we took last school year were necessary, but the stakes are even higher as the pandemic continues. We are faced with students whose learning has been slowed and knocked off course through no fault of their own. They need us to be successful. Any less than success will profoundly impact thousands of lives. It's a challenge we understand and we will meet. That urgency is reflected in the newest version of the board's strategic priorities. Of those 7 priorities, the first is to ensure effective, relevant, and rigorous instruction. This call to action has increased importance as we take steps to help students recover the skills and lessons lost while they were away from brick and mortar school. As the board was seeking to implement the strategies in this plan, the CEO and her team were active during the spring and summer to gather direct feedback about the return to in-person learning from parents, teachers, principals, community members, business leaders, and most importantly, from our students. Those voices informed the multi-year plan unveiled this fall to not only recover from the pandemic, but to chart the path forward to increase student success.
So for those listening, to be clear, the plan that the chairman is talking about,
I just sent you a message.
I saw it. The plan that she's talking about was their reimagine, recover, all of that plan. It was a 53-page plan. The first 23 pages of it were who they talked to and what they found out, that all of which were Captain Obvious moments. They didn't start the actual plan until about halfway through the 52 pages. And the plan still has lots of holes and gaps. I'll share that link with you to that plan so people can see it for themselves.
Excited about this new path, and believe it meets the standards set in our priorities, as well as feedback from the community. I will end my remarks here so the CEO and her team can walk you all through R3 and its role in increased student achievement and organizational excellence. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. I just want to make sure, Chair Stokes, that I should proceed. Does that make sense? Great. Thank you, sir. Good evening. Thank you, Council President, for just your recognition of the hard work in the many sectors of our district and many members of our team. Chairman Stokes, I want to thank you for giving the school system the opportunity this evening. We will queue up a brief presentation to walk through because we know from past experience that our City Council members will have very important questions to ask, and we want to get to that. And then finally, I just want to thank Board Chair Richardson for her framing of the work that we do together, both as board and staff, to really set our schools on a trajectory of improvement. We know that a lot of the challenges we have faced are in many ways compounded over a number of years and were just made even more stark during the last 17 months of renewed, most recent racial unrest across the country, and most notably a once-in-a-generation health crisis. And so with that, we welcome the opportunity. And I don't know whether the PowerPoint tonight, I have staff with me who will be joining me in the presentation and will also be available to help answer any of our City Council members' questions this evening. I will also.
You know what's amazing to me is
quick presentation.
It's almost as if we're not here. Like we're watching them.
Mhm.
They're doing all the talking. So like we have a parent on here with us. We have Van on here who has a child in school, but she can't ask any questions.
No.
Really make sure that we walk through. So
no, because that would be unscripted. This is
queued up for
this is not an actual hearing. This is
so you guys can let me know
a show.
If I will
like save your butt kind of thing.
Yes.
See it yet?
Yeah. So Van, how do you feel about this being a parent that you're not able to ask any questions or comment?
It's very upsetting because I have a whole lot of questions that I need to answer. I need them to answer. It's very upsetting that I can't say anything.
Yeah. And what are some of the issues that you're, I mean, well, let's put it out here. What are a couple of the questions that you have that you would like to ask?
Are you speaking about the pandemic, where they're going back to school? Or
you personally, what are some of the personal issues that you have that if you could ask them a question, what would one of the questions be?
So the first question that I would ask them, I have an autistic nephew, and he's in the class with other children that their disability isn't like his. He's not keeping up. So the teacher puts him in the back of the classroom because he can't keep up. He can't do the things that the rest of the kids are doing. But they passed him in the 10th grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Something else that occurred that she got pushed out. Thank you.
So, and the young lady that was supposed to be running the presentation,
something's happening with her technology, so I just talked to
declined.
She declined
and left the meeting. Apparently, they're saying no, she's just having technical difficulties and trying to come back in.
Wow.
We'll see.
Wow.
So they're supposed to be showing a presentation now.
Marguerite, this is Melissa.
Another way for
to be back in if you can
the
make me the
CEO
presenter, I can share the
to
PowerPoint.
be able to blow some more smoke and mirrors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
From what I see, though, they're getting ready to start the presentation.
Great, thank you, Melissa.
Pastor Shannon, if you know, what are they doing far as the children are in school, and how would they know if they're not in school and their capabilities of their learning tastic? I think a lot of them have told me that they have the principal has spoken and said if they pass the 508, and that's the part where the disability that falls in, and the other one is the PRP testing. If it goes by that, so they feel like those two tests, the two tests that they're running for them, if they pass it, it's no kind of disability.
Yeah, it seems like they're not really prepared to deal with the special needs or individual needs, and they're trying to, instead of figuring out how to deal with the special needs, they're trying to figure out a way how to avoid dealing with the special needs.
The other issue is the classrooms are overwhelmed, and it's just one teacher. Once upon a time, they used to have an aide.
Yes.
But it's no more of that because things have totally changed.
Yes. So, unfortunately and interestingly, we went to visit a school last week that was a new principal. She was new. She'd been there about a year, and she was brought in to try and whip some things back into shape. And in elementary school, she had class sizes of 29 and 30 students. That's not effective for learning, much less safe with COVID mitigation.
Right.
So they're getting ready to touch on now health and safety. And it's interesting to me how they're talking about their plan and how their plan was touted regionally and nationally as a model. The only problem is they are not following their own plan. So if they were doing this plan the way they promoted it, then it would be state of the art and exceptional, but they're not.
Baltimore City Health Department, as well as many health advisors who have been with us throughout the last 17 plus months. So we have professionals from Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, as well as Morgan State University, who have joined with us to really help guide us with their in-depth public health and medical knowledge. You'll see here the list of measures that we have in place currently. These are protocols that we built on really now almost over a year ago.
So I'm trying to see this list of protocols that she's talking about.
We're some of the first in the state and the country.
Just going to unplug my secondary device here.
Chief Perkins Cohen and her team really has still, even today, Baltimore City is probably the only or one of only a handful.
So on the slide, for those of you that are watching, doing a multiple device approach like we're doing here, this slide would be great if they were actually doing it. They're not doing complete social distancing. We've still got school buildings that don't have running water, so hand washing is not happening.
A bit challenging, but overall, one of the
and they just changed the slide. But several of the mitigation strategies that they're outlining are not happening. So many parents in the schools already know that. There's not 6 feet of distancing. If you've got 29, 30 kids in a classroom, there's not enough space in that room to distance all those children.
Yep.
In our K-8 schools.
Right now, she's talking about the positivity rate,
which is actually lower than the positivity rate of
which is interesting.
we had from
They
March
tout
1st
the
through June
statistics
15th. you'll see that our
based in
testing in
spring
middle and high schools
and summer.
shows a positivity rate of 0.42%.
And they're really
during
just
last
talking
week,
about
and this is lower
the
than
positivity rate,
we had,
which
again, even in the spring
is
when we
interesting
had less young people,
because
March 1st through June 15th.
according to their own
And then
numbers,
here we just have for city
between
council and
the
public,
spring and the summer,
just a sampling
they have 400
of
and some odd
some
cases.
of the
In the
recognition we
first 3
received
weeks of
for
school,
that major effort.
they have had
We
close to
also,
300 cases.
have,
So
made
you're telling
great
me
progress
your
with
strategy
regards to
that was recognized
vaccination
regionally and
and the
nationally
support we've
in the spring and
received,
summer that worked
from
so
the
well
city,
to keep such a
from
low
City Health
positivity
and
rate,
other organizations,
that whatever you're doing now,
our, teachers
you've
at
got,
last count were at
you're
about
at almost that
88%,
case count
fully
only 3 weeks in.
vaccinated. Principals,
Oh,
So
Pastor Shannon, sorry to interrupt you. Somebody was saying that, so he's saying two voices speaking together is difficult to hear both at once. So I guess when we're talking, just if you could just turn it down just a little bit,
sorry, I can do
we can hear
that. Sorry.
you. Your voice is so soft,
Sorry.
so they can hear what you're saying. Yeah. Thank you, Gabriel.
Sorry about that. So right now they're talking about asymptomatic testing. They're talking about what the positivity rate had been for the spring and summer. There were, I believe, 438 cases between spring and summer. And right now, there are about 300 cases only 3 weeks in. So if your plan was so great and wonderful that you used for the spring and the summer, what are you doing differently now that's not working for you to be 3 weeks in almost at that same number through the entire spring and summer?
So the total that I have on the paperwork, because I'm always in the school and Board of Education, the paper I have, it's a total maybe about 600 to the cases that they're speaking of.
Well, they're using time delayed updated data from the dashboard, which
Exactly.
is lagging to about 200 to 300. So
Okay.
the number that you're seeing, and I'll ask you off camera which school you're able to go to and get that kind of information, is more than the district claims they had the entire spring and summer this year.
Okay.
That's problematic. So we're talking now about summer learning and summer learning strategies and more of what they did and how successful they were in the summer. There was limited enrollment available in the summer. There was still distance and hybrid in the summer. And they're touting the graduates from the summer. That does not diminish the grade changing and ghost students and all of the other funny business going on in the schools still. So now we're talking about, I'll just turn it up so you can hear it for yourself.
Okay.
Of attending to the social emotional needs of young people and reconnecting them with high quality relationships. So our summer learning strategy did pay off, and I'll now turn to Chief John Davis to talk a bit about how that has really led into our focus on culture, climate, and then Chief Dabrowski will talk about our personalized learning. So Chief Davis, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Dr. Santelises. Before we get into both culture and climate and then also student learning plans, what you see in front of you is really the framework for our 3R plan: reconnect, restore, reimagine. And before we get into it, I want to be super clear that since the start of the pandemic, our engagement work has produced about 178,000 touches with our community. And I use the word touches because many families gave us feedback on more than one occasion. But I want people to understand that what you're going to see here in the next 10 minutes is really an outgrowth of many discussions that really started at the beginning of the pandemic and accelerated a lot over the summer as we were putting the final touches to this. And you can see there are preconditions like health and safety that Dr. Santelises spoke about, connectivity. There are some overarching commitments around student voice, again, engagement that will not stop, equity, professional learning, and then there are key strategies. And while there's 5 key strategies, the 2 that we are going to pay the most attention to, and we paid the most attention to start the year off well, is around wellness, school culture and climate, and personalized learning.
Okay, I'm gonna lower that there. Ms. Van, as a parent, how would you rate them on their involvement and quote parent touches to keep everybody in the loop? How would you rate them on that?
You really want my answer?
I sure do.
Unfairly. It's impossible. A 0. Poor. I mean, I can go on, especially when it comes to the middle schools and the elementaries.
Okay. So did the district reach out to you at all during this?
They didn't.
Okay.
And I went to the Board of Education because I didn't. Some parents said that they did. I didn't. I didn't even get an email.
Okay. So when you reached out to them, were they responsive?
Well, they shunned me and they gave me a pamphlet and it had some things in there that had nothing to do with the questions that was needed or because since the pandemic.
Got it.
It was basically a handbook of what the kids' expectations, the kids' learning, disabilities, the distance, 6 feet, trying to gather a ballpark figure of what was in the handbook or what they needed for schools.
Mm-hmm.
They had some scores in there that I was unsure of. I was trying to reach out to them so they could answer a few questions about the scores that was in there. But I was assuming that the scores were the schools come from the numbers that they were given because it was named different schools. Schools that I don't even know because I didn't have children or family members that go to them schools. So
Right.
that's what I gathered.
Okay. And that is very different than the picture that the district is painting.
Painting a real big picture, that things that he spoke of that I never heard, didn't see it, but I know it's supposed to happen.
It is absolutely supposed to happen in every district, all over.
Every
That's what
district, absolutely.
All right, let's go back to this. I'm going to turn it up. And we're talking about focus on nurturing relationships.
The advisories are one of our best ways to make sure that nurturing relationships continues. Let's keep going. And I'll turn it over to Chief Dabrowski as she'll talk about probably the second biggest area, which is student learning plans.
Thanks so much, Chief Davis. So as we've already heard, one of the cornerstones of our work as we've been bringing our students back for in-person learning is this idea of knowing our students as human beings. So this notion of personalized learning and the way it's being thought about right now at this particular moment in our schools is through the development of student learning plans, or what we've been saying are SLPs. And so what we've done so far is over the summer, we worked with a core group of teachers and principals and central office leaders to develop a process for how we would get to know our students individually. And so we established, again, I'll show on the next slide, a really user-friendly form for how we could collect information. We trained all of our teachers on how to use this tool. And we thought about how this plan would work in alignment with some of the other important student plans that we have, such as IEPs or 504s. And so again, as we thought about this as being a really important moment for us to hone in on our students so that we could be ready for them as we plan for their academic recovery. And
Pastor Shannon, that's what I was speaking about.
Tomorrow is a systemic PD day here in
Okay,
schools.
let's turn this down.
So the day
Go ahead. You were saying?
So what she mentioned is also what I just spoke about, the 504, the PRP, And that's what they're basing on with these children. That's
Right.
it's unfairly to the children.
Okay.
Because you have 30 children in a class, so the ones that have a little disability of learning, and they're saying to me, like one teacher told me on Wednesday, she said she really can't teach because the other children that they mixed in the class from, and it was due to a meeting that the parents were saying the children I feel like they're being labeled out because they put them in, as they used to say, DEC classes, and they feel like that they should mix them all together. She mentioned to me that she has to stop the class and can't teach the children that are learning faster than the other children. And she said in her class, I asked her how many children is in her class. She said it's 28 children.
Wow. Okay. That's problematic. That if you have 28 children in a class that are all at different levels, that is a bit problematic to be able to give everyone the best, the optimal academic experience. It's not possible.
Not at all.
So that means the children that need extra assistance are going to fall further behind.
Yep. And that's what I said to her. But I asked her, I said, what came up with the solution of no children left behind is the reason they're pushing these children with low scores. Some of them may not have any scores at all, or not enough scores to go to the next level or even pass. You're
Right.
pushing these children and they can't spell C, or they can't spell education, or they can't spell ABC. You're pushing these children that can't read, and if they're reading, they don't understand it. If they know math, they don't know how to add, subtract, multiply, divide.
Right. Wow. So then you get pushed through without even the basics to be able to function in society.
Yes.
And again, you can't ask a question. So what kind of resolution do we come to with this whole meeting that they're having? And they're the only ones talking, and they're telling us what they're going to do, what they've done, what they plan to do, but you're not listening to the problems that people are experiencing. So I just have a whole problem with everything that they're doing today.
Well, the problem is what they're doing looks, I won't say great, it looks passable on paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's not being implemented. And this report that they built these slides on is the same report they released about a month or so ago. This is not new. Mm-hmm. This is not because of Augusta Fells and there being problems. This was what they were doing. And it, as I said, it's 53 pages. The first 20 some odd pages are who they talked to. The last pages are what they found, including their COVID mitigation strategy. So if you take out the pages on the COVID mitigation strategy, that doesn't leave you many pages to discuss any kind of substantive plan to be able to close the academic learning gap. This is more smoke and mirrors from what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I was really hoping tonight would be something fresh, something new, accepting some ownership and responsibility for some of the problems, talking about how this has been systemic and multi-generational, and we're going to work together, kind of bring everybody into the fold, work together to fix this for the kids of the city. But what I'm seeing and hearing here is more smoke and mirrors based on a Captain Obvious report.
Exactly. And what is with them that they're so afraid? They could have even had a Zoom where they had maybe two parents on there. At least they had one or two parents.
Well,
but,
this is actually an improvement because the last hearing that the Board of Education themselves did, when you logged on to the Zoom link where you were supposed to be able to be in the room and ask questions, it was only in Spanish.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. I was about to say that, Pastor. Yes, it was. Let me tell you this.
The only way to get English was to go to the Facebook Live version where you could only ask questions in the chat and none of the questions were actually being answered.
And she's right. You're right, Pastor.
That meeting.
That is unbelievable.
So this, by a comparison, is an improvement.
Wow.
I am really trying to keep up with this because it's important, because I have a nephew that I'm raising and I try to keep up to the best that I can. And clearly I just get shut down and pushed away. And then when I keep pushing back, my next step is I am in an organization with the PPA, People Power Assembly. Who those that don't know, we come pushing, boots on the ground. So I think that they will want to let us speak out, and they need to hear us. I think they're not listening because there's not enough parents that
Right.
are
Right.
coming out and support. And it's like, so if you're not supporting and you're not speaking out, they're going to continue to do what they doing.
Exactly. They're going to keep doing what they've been doing as long as they can get away with it. They're talking about now additional support. So I'm going to turn that up for a few minutes.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to turn my camera off for a quick minute, and I will be right back. I'm going to leave this up for you.
Okay.
And those resources are in place. We can go ahead and move those things right along. Extended day is another exciting support that's going to begin in Q2. Again, this is for those students who will be best served with additional time to focus on their academic needs. So again, schools will be developing their plans for how that after school work will look, and if it will be focusing on literacy or math, or in some cases it will be both. So again, really excited about that. And then I want to highlight just briefly our commitment to acceleration, which is a very intentional shift away from what we traditionally think about as remediation. So again, if we think about this idea that we know students may have some gaps and who may be behind because of what happened over the last 18 months. And so a remediation model might suggest that a student who hasn't learned a grade level skill yet be placed into a group or be held back and focused on that remediation. And what we know from the research is that those students actually continue to fall further behind. They never catch up with their grade level peers. And so what we do know and what we are learning is a much more promising forward-thinking model called acceleration, where we focus very specifically on key skills that students will need to master grade level content. And we do laser-like focus on prerequisite teaching to ensure that they have what they need to hit grade level content. And again, we'll use things like tutoring and extended day experiences to get students ready to meet grade level so that we can always be thinking forward and not use a deficit model of remediation. I'm going to ask Chief Davis to jump in and talk about that last bullet point about expansion of school wellness and behavioral health supports.
Thank you, Dr. Liberty. Besides the social workers that a couple of years ago we guaranteed were in every single school, we're also expanding additional behavioral health supports, especially through something called ESBH, which is Expanded School Behavior Health Program. We have partners we work with, organizations that bring in additional clinicians, and they have already been doing small group work with students that we know need additional supports. They work in classrooms with teachers. They work with SST teams around attendance. So the clinicians that come in really do more than just work with students in a one-on-one setting. They work in groups. They've done a lot so far in these first 4 weeks, and we're working to get even 15 more schools signed up for this. And so we're doing everything we can to get more social workers and more clinicians with our students and with our schools, and to really figure out the students that we know need the supports. We'll continue to do this. I mean, I think one of the things that I also want to call out is this is just the beginning of the plan, right? We did a lot of work in the spring and the summer, but as you saw the different timelines that Dr. Dabrowski put out with the SLP, if we know we need to change and move in different areas, especially around the school behavioral health supports, we will do that. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. St. Elisis as we close this out.
So I'm going to lower this here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about additional school supports, tutoring, extended day, acceleration, not remediation, expansion of school wellness and behavioral supports. Now, Dr. Santelises last week was on a virtual town hall with Councilwoman Odetta, I don't want to get her name wrong, right, Councilwoman Ramos. And in that town hall, they kind of veered from, well, I'll put it this way. Councilwoman Ramos said, I know this isn't on the list of questions we sent, but it's related. And then asked her question. So she confirmed what most of us suspected that were watching, that this was pre-scripted. Okay. Now, When I gotta say, y'all listen careful. When you go to college and you come out and you go back and get extended degrees and you come back out and you go back in and get certifications and your field is academia, which means part of which is communication, articulation, and the mastery of the English language, and you have to have scripted questions to be able to answer what you've been doing, you have 78,000 students, you make $340,000, which is $20,000 less than the chancellor of schools in New York, who has well over 1 million students. Your students, 41%, have a 1.0 or lower GPA. The GPAs are falling, proficiency is falling, graduation is falling, and you need pre-scripted questions. We need a new
Come on, Pastor.
I'm just saying, look, I don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand this does not compute. It is not adding up. So I'm going to let her continue to spin her own words for y'all.
Jones, we also had a good amount of surveys this year that kept us linked up to what the schooling experience felt like for families and for young people. And what we are looking at is really where the trajectory of growth.
Yes, this is Dr. Santelisa's talking.
And not all of our schools are where we want them to be, but we're looking at what's the trajectory of growth, what are the changes that need to be made, what is the growth after some of those changes are made, and how do we adjust along the way. So I would say there's a suite of different factors that we look at. It's not just a single score, but it really is a composite of what I've described, and we're benchmarking against what's the trajectory of progress of a particular school or a cluster of schools.
Okay, my second question: what is the process for setting performance goals? What is the city schools looking at when they determine what is important?
So when we're setting performance goals and targets, it's a combination of where is a school starting, where do we ultimately want that school to be, right? Because we want high achievement across the board. But it's also, again, what's the ground that we want to see and that we think is reasonable in a given period of time. Some folks know this as SMART goals, and all that means is that those goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, meaning they might be stretch goals, but they're goals nonetheless. They're relevant and they are timely.
Okay.
So a combination of
I'm going to take the volume down here for a second. Again, another point that I think needs to be clarified. Dr. Santelises is talking all these great catchphrases, SMART goals and closing gaps and this and that and the other. To be clear, every school in the state of Maryland is judged and graded by the Maryland Board of Education. So these goals, what happens is the state comes in and audits and says, y'all ain't nowhere near where the $15,000 per student plus that we send you should have you. And it gives the schools actual performance grades. We went to visit a school last week that was working to change some things. They're under the leadership of a new principal who I think is going to be dynamic and wonderful. But when I checked their state report card, they only had a 55%.
Pastor, and so did Francis Inwood. Francis Inwood as well.
Yep. And there are a lot that have an even lower score. So what happens is the state comes in and scores the schools, and then they put together a plan for the schools to be able to show improvement, just like the individual academic programs they put together for students in need. And the schools get graded on whether they meet their goals. Now, for those of you that heard the words that just came out of my mouth, I'm going to explain in between the lines on the words that just came out of my mouth. If I am running the district and I have schools that are barely above failing, and I have an academic performance plan that I, as the administrator, have to get this school up to, then we start to see an answer to the question, what's the big deal about why would it be so important to grade change? Now, if I can't actually teach to make sure the students are getting educated, then I got to fake the front, as it's called, as folks used to say, to be able to give you the impression that I'm getting where I'm supposed to be based on your analysis of what we're actually doing in that particular building. So people say, well, if you grade change, that doesn't really change the numbers, but it does change the school's performance. It does change whether the school is close to meeting their academic achievement plan. If the school is not close, if the school is not showing progress, if the school is backsliding, that could push us close to a monitor or receivership or some other sort of remedial method to be able to force improvement in the district. Now, we can't hide the money if more eyes are watching. So to make sure we don't have more eyes watching, let's fix the papers so that the papers say, well, we may not be improving as quickly as we're supposed to be, but we're not backsliding. That's the significance of grade changing.
You said a mouthful right there.
Those students is another thing. We're going to get to that. But that's the significance of grade changing, because I can't have you sending somebody else up in here to watch what I'm doing and not be able to do what I'm doing. So I'm going to make sure you see what you need to see to feel like you don't need to come in here and put more eyes on me.
Exactly.
So I'm going to turn this back up and listen to where we are now.
Siblings in the case that you laid out would be quarantined in order to make sure we're preventing spread to other individuals at the school. And then your second question was about if you have a positive case, where does the school report it? Was that the question?
I guess they're kind of all the parents are confused of what to do with that child. It's not positive. Who do they contact? Do they go? Do they have to stay home too? There's just some confusion in getting that information out.
Yeah. So again, if their sibling that they live with in their home is positive, then they're considered a close contact of the sibling who's positive, and so therefore they need to be quarantined as well. So they would be home as well, and they should report that to the school. Sometimes siblings may live together but go to different schools, so we would want to make sure that they told that to their school that the other child goes to as well.
Okay. And then my second question, in that second part where you were going over the wellness, climate, and culture, really appreciate all those wonderful new things that are coming to, like tutoring, the extended day. All of those things are very good in helping to form a better student. You haven't really met, and I know these things all help the teacher. Is there something that you're actually doing for the quote unquote teacher themselves? Is there training for that teacher? How do we get great, wonderful, supportive teachers that are going to, the teacher is still in charge of that classroom. They're still the top leader. So what are you doing for the teacher themselves? You're bringing in all this extra work. Can you hone in on that teacher and how to keep their mental stability and, their physical health? To maintain and be.
Now, unfortunately, I don't know if anybody else could hear it clearly when the gentleman before talked about some of the pillars, some of the things that they're doing. And then they talked about two that they were going to focus on. One was professional development for the teachers. And it's very interesting to me that they're now taking questions from the council folk that, for someone who may have just seen this report for the first time, that they're following along quite well. And it's interesting to me that their questions are following the table of contents of the report.
Right. But nobody is, I hear what the lady is saying, but nobody is really challenging this woman for what she's doing in the school system. You know, they're kind of dancing around it like they're afraid to really ask the question. You know, this is why it's so important to have a parent on. Or, you know, I know the teachers are not going to come on, but at least have some parents on, because they're dancing around all of these questions. And if they don't have any children in the school system, why are you talking? You know, it is
no. Wait, hold on. Let me interrupt you there. Without children in a district, everybody that lives in the state of Maryland should be paying attention. You know why? Because your tax dollars are paying for this debacle.
Right.
Now, not only are your tax dollars paying for it, if you live in Frederick County and your delegation goes and they work on the budget and they sign off on the budget, what percentage of the state budget goes to Baltimore City? Which means if Baltimore City got its act together, how much of your tax revenue in your local district could actually stay in your district? So I want to know, I want to hear, I want to see, I want to feel the anger from everybody up in the state, because y'all all paying for it. The average private school tuition is less than Baltimore City gets per student. And you want to tell me why we have to have these smoke and mirror hearings and proficiency issues and ghost students and grade changing and all this other mess, when you get more money per student than most of the private schools do, and they sure do produce an educated child?
Yes, ma'am.
That does not compute.
I'm sorry. Because they produce mine, and I sure paid out the nose for him to go to private school. But this right here is a mess. This is a whole mess.
So I'm not even so interested in hearing more of what they have to say at this point. I'm turning back up for you in a minute. But I think the one thing that we all need to get parents to understand is they are the solution.
Mm-hmm.
They may not write the check. They may not do a performance review of the teacher, the administrators, or anybody else. But the parents have the power.
Yep.
The problem is the parents have abdicated that power to people that are more concerned about the check. Now, I'm not saying all the teachers are concerned about the check. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying, I'll put it to you this way. Everybody's been talking about Augusta Fell-Savage, about the principal and the vice principal there, and their elaborate scheme to be able to do all the things that they did. How those women were put on suspension, still paid for 17 months, and the principal allowed to retire with full benefits. They brought in a new principal, who we now know was under investigation at 2 schools before coming to Augusta Fells for the same thing that was going on in Augusta Fells. I personally have been going to visit schools. School I went in has a new principal because the old principal was caught, proven to be grade changing. What are we doing? What
and that's what I was speaking.
Allowing people to do.
And that's what I was speaking on. If we just get enough parents, because this is serious. I care about education. Education is the most important with our children than anything else. My question was to them about, okay, so my nephew goes to a grade school. So the school that he's attending, so far, we into 3 weeks, 6 kids has gotten COVID. I'm not saying to them, the school, that the children caught COVID in the school, because we don't know who those children or kids live with or child live with that they could have came in contact with that had COVID. Some people or children does not get the symptoms, so they don't know. So now you're bringing it into the school, so quite naturally that they didn't pass it on to other children. So what do you do as far as cleaning the schools or fixing a problem? But you're saying keep the children home for 14 days. My question to them was, if you're keeping them home, who are teaching them on virtual while they're staying home for 14 days? They just can't stay home and don't do anything. So who is responsible to when they get on virtual, or are they allowed to get on virtual because they're staying home? How does that work? Nobody answered my question.
Because they don't have an answer. That's why they didn't answer. They don't have
and it's frustrating.
They don't have a client. They don't.
So now also what I find interesting is this virtual town hall that Dr. Santelises came out and did last week again. They're talking about this wellness part of the program. But she admitted that one, the testing was not done at the beginning of the school year. So you can't say, see, now have you tested students, given everybody a test the weekend before school started? You would have known, you would have been able to keep folks safer longer. But they didn't start testing until a couple of weeks in. And they were saying that they were doing on-site, district-wide on-site testing, which I now understand is not true. They're working with the Baltimore City Health Department to do testing at different sites and locations, and of course, vaccination sites and clinics and all that sort of thing. But what she further admitted was, in the schools where for symptomatic students are going to the nurse's office for them to be able to test, they don't actually have nurses in every building. And then, when those children are stressed and traumatized by how they're not feeling and this and that, they don't actually have social workers in each of the buildings. So in a lot of cases, in a lot of schools, if your child turns up symptomatic and they are sent to the office, they're sent to the office, first of all, because there's not a nurse in the building. Then somebody in the office
is going to get it.
A non-medical person is going to poke your child to the back of their brain with that swab. Okay? Your child will sit in a cubby hole till the result come back or till you come get them. This is not the way this is supposed to work. This is not the way it works in any private school. It's not the way it works in most charter schools. But in Baltimore City, it's all good. And we allow that.
Yep.
I'm not good with that.
And I think
not at all.
Figure out why the parents are not involved. Like as a parent, I don't understand it. I said maybe somebody can explain it to me. Why are you okay with sending your children there and you're not involved in what's going on?
So I know that I've heard some parents saying that they've been threatened. Really? Children to not be able to be in the programs that they want or have different classes, different things that they want if they speak up.
Threatened by who?
You really asking that question?
Like who?
That's what I was getting ready to say. I was ready to raise my hand, but I was as well until I raised my voice. But I was escorted out by the school police. I was.
That doesn't surprise me.
I couldn't stay I couldn't stay calm because I thought that I was one person, but I was speaking for 10 parents. I got so frustrated because it's nobody standing behind me, but then I have 20 people facing me that can't answer my questions. Can't answer my questions.
They don't want to answer your question.
I look at they think that I was uneducated because I was asking about the school, the count of the school, how many children is supposed to be to each school. I was just asking questions like the percentage. I was asking so many questions and they feel like we can't answer until we are told to answer. Well, we can't answer because what's going on now that so many teachers and principals are getting attacked and we want to keep them safe. You don't have to tell me the names. You'll have to tell me the schools. I didn't ask that question.
Yeah, because it's not a priority.
Everything I said at the beginning, everything I said at the beginning of me, yourself, and Doc was on here. They repeated it. This is the things that I have asked. I wish it was more personal here with me that can ask these questions without even saying names.
Yep. This is unacceptable.
And I'm glad you explained it to me the way that you did because I love to be educated. I am grateful that you explained it to me the way that you did. And now it all makes sense.
Because you got to look at when people are doing something systematically and across a district, there's a reason and a purpose. So you got to understand what the reason and the purpose is so that it lends some logic to the manipulation. So I'm listening. I'm going to turn this up for you all now for a few minutes.
So everyone being able to say this.
They're asking her what is her plan to achieve organizational excellence.
success of young people. Now, we don't have that uniformly across every school at the high level we want it to be, but that is the target, that is the direction we're moving. And what it says is everybody is vital, right? Everybody has to be part of what that work looks like. And then, yes, we monitor the data to make sure that we're actually moving in the direction, because good intentions and coming together are a good start. But eventually, right, we have to make sure that it's translating in the direction that we want young people to go, which is towards having the skills and the capacities and the experiences to be able to do, what their hopes and dreams are. So it's a combination of, one, using the data to identify what are the students' needs. And again, that's needs across a variety of spectrums. So both academic, social, emotional, mental health, and just interest. Then we mobilize all of the resources that we have. And in some cases, those are community partners. Like some of our best resources to support students with mental health are actually some of our community partners who do a really good job in a lot of those areas. I went by, Uncle T's mentoring program this summer, and he had a group of like 15, 16 young boys, young men with him. And the work he was doing with them was outside of school, but it was in service to these same goals. So part of the coming together has to be within the system. We are organized in a way that we're promoting excellence, but that we're also getting better at leveraging the resources in the community to also come alongside. And I want to give a shout out to the city of Baltimore, because this city stepped up during the 17 months of being out of school. And really, we had people asking all the time, like, how can we support our young people? So I think that it really is a combination of both of those. But what the data does is help us judge, like, what's the impact of all these inputs and how are we organizing all of the resources around this particular student's need, which is what the student learning profile gives us.
They're going to delve into this and take some more questions. So I'm going to leave this up and I'll be quiet for a few minutes just so we can hear some of the questions. Can you all hear clearly?
And lessons learned from that to kind of get the school system to this point, because I think that's also kind of the subtext for some of these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, one of the, I'm assuming it's a hiccup when you have a major pandemic, but one of the things that we saw was that, for example, and Chief High Hubbard is here, like our community school coordinators stepped up in a big and essential and crucial way. Like, you can't be talking about getting a young person their homework if you've got somebody in the family who can't go to work and there's no groceries, right? If you don't know how to connect to telehealth in order to get your counseling, right? So part of what our community school coordinators did was, I think, really solidified their role as connector between that. I think we also learned that the more cohesive a school culture is before a major crisis, takes hold, the more likely that school community is going to be able to navigate when something like a pandemic or any challenge comes the way. And I think that's part of what drove, Chief Davis's work with principals that began in June. We didn't wait until August, 2 weeks before school opened, to say this is important. We learned that from, it was reinforced for like 13 to 15 months of trying to, continue to educate young people and, to Councilwoman Middleton's point, keep educators connected. Our educators were under great duress. So I think that would be a couple of things I would point out. And I think it speaks to why this emphasis on school culture and this emphasis on personalized learning were the things that we wanted to highlight tonight.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I also want to recognize, if he hasn't already recognized, Councilman Glover, and also see Councilman Torrance is with us as well. So with that, I'll adjourn. Thank you. And now to Councilman Reporter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me.
So Dr. Santalese, I actually have a few questions related to the data of the models that you referenced in your presentation. And so first I'll start with, could you share the research data on the acceleration model as represented in the 15 schools? Can you share the value added from those 15 schools? What metrics were used? And lastly, the scalability model for the more than 200 schools that are left to be represented in the city of Baltimore.
Sure. So what we can do is forward to you, Councilwoman. The research, basically what we used was a lot of the national research, and my colleagues might help me remember. I'm just blanking on the research today, but we can forward that to you. But I think what's most important to know, that part of what drove this was that in that research, and I think it was done with Zern around mathematics and some other areas, the piece that jumped out at us was that overwhelmingly it was Black and brown students who benefited the most from a model of acceleration and not remediation. And what we know in education practice is that actually Black and brown children historically are more likely to be put in remediation, and it doesn't work. And what we saw in Zern was when, as Chief Dabrowski noted in this study, was that when young people had access to what the key learning strands were, they all progressed, but Black and brown children had even greater gains. And you know, there are reasons that, you know, I could suppose for that. And I think one is expectation level, that we often in our society expect Black and brown children to have to go back and take things really, really slow, and they can't do it. And what this research showed was that actually what a lot of us already knew, our young people can do it if we get to the essential skills. But we'll make sure we forward that study to you, because that was actually done beyond just Baltimore and beyond just our school communities, but a number of school communities similar to us.
Okay, I'm gonna lower that there. Did either of you ladies ever watch Saturday Night Live?
Yep, I sure did.
Okay, so you know how they used to do that dating skit, and it was lowered expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, Dr. Santelises, with her multiple degrees, had to get a foreign study to tell her that Black and brown children can learn, and we need to raise the standards as opposed to lowering the standards for the slower Black and brown children. Now she had to go to get all these degrees and earn all this money and go get a study from somewhere else to understand this. So let me ask you this. If you understand that, and you got the degrees to say that you understand that, and you read the study to say that you understand that, why come we still pushing social promotion?
Right.
Why is it, if you have an understanding and a clear, proven academic pattern of seeing that Black and brown students can learn when pushed to learn, and that you want to do acceleration as opposed to remediation? First of all, you can't just substitute the words and call it what you want to call it.
Right.
You have to actually have an accelerated program. Now, let me ask you a question. If my child is in a school where there's 20% proficiency in English, how accelerated is it going to be?
Right. Exactly.
Because your acceleration still has my child below standard.
Yep.
Okay, so you accelerating to get to the baseline. The problem is, see, this is where I get in trouble. One of the biggest problems that we have here in the city of Baltimore is we allow folks that look like us to perpetuate the racism, quote unquote, not knowing, understanding the difference, the subtle difference between racism, classism, and expecting all the woke people to still be asleep.
Come on, Pastor.
Because you can't, there's no other way you can say you care about the welfare of the children when you have to get somebody else to tell you what your degrees should have already told you, what your lifetime of being a Black woman should have already told her, and a mother, because she knew enough to know that she wasn't going to drive her children to Baltimore and put them in these schools with her.
That's right.
She knew enough that she was going to keep them outside of the city and in a private school. So what
you better say it.
Saying?
What you better say it.
Because you're not putting your best foot forward. See, people say that phrase, put your money where your mouth is. Okay. Enroll your children where your belief is. How about that?
Right.
Because if you believe you're doing the best you can here, and you believe that you're creating a climate of excellence, then why aren't your children excellently enrolled in these schools?
That's right. That's right.
I don't.
Why they got to be labeled as numbers to get in a school?
Huh? You know, Judge Judy had a phrase. My husband loves to watch all these. I won't call them stupid. All these special court shows.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Judy has a phrase. She says, "Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's rain."
Mm-hmm.
Why are we allowing these folks to do this here?
But see, I think what happens is that even in how they talk, it's like they try to dumb people down, and they say stuff, and they try to say it in such an educated way that it really sounds like it's real. It's for real, and it's not.
But that's what PR firms and communications firms are for. It's called the art of the spin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the art of the spin is based on the fact that you're blowing smoke, because it's the air in that smoke that's spinning.
That's right.
Now, these days, you've walked past the right corner, was the chemicals in that air and that smoke that's spinning gonna get you high and believe in anything. Because right about now, anybody that believes that this district is actually doing what it should be doing or what it can do to the best of its ability is need to put the cigarette, the pipe, the bottle, whatever it is down.
Yep.
Because this is unacceptable. I'm gonna break it down even further. When you look at cities that are having high crime rates, you're having high crime rates because of a breakdown in the socioeconomic culture of the city. Now, follow me on that. The socioeconomic climate of that city. That means when you start to see that crime breakdown, companies have left.
Yep.
Real estate values are dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when those two things happen, that's directly related to poor management of the city. When the poor management of the city happens and the population starts declining and the jobs start leaving, okay, hope for a better future for your children starts going out the door with those companies.
That's right.
And when that hope goes out the door, it leaves a nice big old hole for despair to come up in there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get that despair up in there and you see the jobs leaving and you see the property values falling and you see abandoned properties growing and you see the supermarkets even leaving,
mm-hmm.
you're going to start looking at doing things that you weren't raised to do, but you're going to do what you need to do to keep food on your table.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when people look at, now, my black and brown folk, some of us are first generation homeowners and some of us aren't even at homeowner status yet. But I'm going to tell you something. My family, we're not generations of homeowners. That's cute. And it was something to strive for. But this is the first generation of that in my family. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because it's the first generation, there weren't our elders for us to look at to tell us more specifically how to look at what you want to get, what the ratio should be, and all that sort of thing. But one of the two things I knew to look for, that I had been blessed to be around people that talked about it enough that it started to stick and resonate, check on the public schools,
Mm-hmm.
and check on the property values.
Mm-hmm.
If the property values are going up and the public schools are rated well,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably in a place that when you buy, your property will increase in value. Now, we can't say that here in Baltimore right now.
Nope.
We absolutely cannot say that. Anybody that's looking at bringing in a company, a corporation that's going to have multiple jobs in multiple different disciplines, you better believe when they're looking at where they're moving their company, they're looking at the tax structure. They're looking at the economic, the overall economic climate. They're looking at the public schools, and they're looking at public safety. And when the leadership of the city, who has a great deal of responsibility for most of those factors, is not doing their job, this city, I don't care how many times you go to DC with your hand out or go to Annapolis with your hand out, you cannot beg for enough money from either one of them to be able to run this city correctly until you actually clean house and get some leaders that understand how to lead. You know that, when we were younger and our grandmothers would talk about money don't fall from trees, and you got to learn how to stretch. We don't seem to have that here. The money that came into this city as a relief and jumpstart during the COVID pandemic? Why didn't that money first go to the small businesses that are creating the jobs that are keeping people working? Why didn't some of that money go to protective equipment for these companies to be able to keep their doors open? Why did a great deal of that money, $5 million, go to a tourism campaign for people to travel at a time where everybody's supposed to be locked down? What is the leadership of this city doing?
You know what? They show us every day. They show us every day what they're doing. When you go to these neighborhoods and you see neighborhoods that look like third world countries and they just waiting for the houses to fall down so they can rebuild and bring, certain people into the neighborhood. We already see what's going on. The harbor, it looks like a ghost town. A lot of stuff is closed up down there. But, I'm not going to say that they don't know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. And the people in the city have to wake up. The people in the city have to wake up and speak up.
So, okay, I'm you know what? I'm gonna tell the truth and shame the devil. I went to school for business and economics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you say that the people in the city, the leaders in the city, know what they're doing, that means that they're doing it deliberately, and they are deliberately selling out everybody that looks like them.
Okay.
The only reason you would sell out everybody that looks like them is because you are getting a kickback or a throwback, a check, padding your IRA, whatever it may be. Because other than that, if you know what you're doing, you would not be doing that. Right. Because the only way people deliberately sell out the people they're elected to represent is if there is some personal gain in it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I choose to believe that they don't know what they're doing. Because if I have to believe that they do, then I know then it is deliberate. And when you know what you're doing and it's deliberate, it is then criminal.
Mm. Well,
I'm sorry, I forgot. This is Baltimore. We've already seen that. Catherine Pugh, Sheila Dixon, Ms. Glenn, Nat Oakes. There's a history of that here and there.
If they don't know what they're doing, they have no business sitting in those seats, and they've been sitting in those seats for years. So it's hard for me to believe that they don't know what they're doing. And
so here's the thing about that.
Seats.
They butts couldn't sit in those seats if people didn't put them there.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm.
So let's look in the mirror for a moment.
Yep.
And understand on a personal, individual level, how gullible are you?
Mm-hmm.
That people can sell you the same line cycle after cycle after cycle, and you keep buying it, seeing that what's happening is going in the wrong direction.
Yep.
You are.
There we go. Sorry about that. Everything that we're seeing and feeling in the city is because of the people that we've chosen to vote for.
I think a lot of people voted for those people that's in those chairs. I think they looked at, when they looked them up, they looked up their education. They didn't, or the college degrees, because really they're not saying much about the ones that's in office. And for what I gather, the conversation before you turned it down, it seems like to me, everybody points the finger for blame, but I felt like that they were trying to talk over our heads, not Pastor you and Doc, the parents, because it seemed like they were pushing the parents. It's because of the parents and not so many words saying it, but you're throwing slurs to say it's the parents. Well, or if we had this parent, or if we had so many X amount of parents, and they feel like the parents are just sitting the children there and that's it, that's all. So once the doors open back up, the all the school buildings are full because parents wanted our kids, the kids, to go back to school because they said they're not learning, mainly from the virtual. They're not learning by virtual. Some of them didn't have a Comcast or internet, and then it was more so it was kids that have a disability. Those were the parents that was pushing for the kids to go back to school. Yes, because you want the teacher to be the teacher and the parent.
So I got to agree with you on that. There have been a lot of folks that say, well, I hear what you're saying about the teachers in the district, but where are the parents? Why aren't the parents involved? So here's the thing. This didn't just start in Baltimore. It has been going on for a couple generations now. So you got parents that are trying to be parents that don't know how to be parents. So we got to do a couple things. We got to educate. One of the things that I think would be the most beneficial is to move to a community school model across the board, so that you are educating the children, you are including the parents and extended family and the community, so that all is working together for the academic good of that child. Because then you don't have to blame the parents of this and that. See, because the problem is you blame the parents. Well, why aren't the parents doing this and why aren't the parents doing that? And on the other side of your face, you hoping that the parents never do those things, because then they're watching you, they're checking you, and they're making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You are muted. Van, you're muted.
And you know, a lot of these.
No, I was agreeing to what you were saying.
Oh, okay.
You know, a lot of these parents, they have been educated, or should I say miseducated, in the school system, and now they're raising children.
Yes.
So they're
raising these children on on misinformation.
Yeah, they're raising children now. You know, and they're struggling just as much as the children are. Yes. So it's just a revolving door. It's like, oh my goodness, like I don't even know. I told you, I've given up on even trying to figure out how to help to make it work. I don't know.
Well, I do believe that there are some solutions. I honestly do. I believe that one, we need to increase the amount of vouchers that are available for parents to move their child to a school that better suits that child's individual needs. That we need to change the criteria for charter schools and make this a more charter-friendly city. Next, we need to introduce academic savings accounts so that the money that comes in from the state follows the student across lines, whether it's private school, public school, or religiously affiliated school. And I believe if you do that, then what happens is you've introduced the spirit of competition into the district, so that you don't have to, for parents that don't want to come out and rally and speak up, you do those things that I just mentioned. You're going to introduce competition into the district, so that the Board of Education now understands that they have to succeed in doing the things that they talk about doing, because if not, the money that they've been playing around with is going to continue to dwindle.
Now, let me ask you this. With all that you all are doing, like your group that goes out, have you all been able to actually meet with any of the school board members, Santa Lisa, anybody, city council, that's been willing to sit down and talk to you and hear what you're saying?
So Santa Lisa's absolutely not. I did actually about 2-3 weeks ago at this point now had a good meeting with I don't want to butcher the young woman's name, the president of the teachers union.
Okay.
Interestingly enough. And was informed from different teachers that I've been speaking with that there have been several grievances filed against the Board of Education by the teachers union already this year.
Wow.
For them not being completely informed, for them not getting the resources in the building to be able to enact the policies that are in this 52-page smoke and mirror report that they're going over tonight. And that they're setting them up to fail. So what the district is doing is saying all the right things, but not giving the buildings the resources to actually do what they're saying.
Right.
So Dr. Santelices, in the email she sent me last week, talked about how, part of the mitigation strategy was outdoor dining out for the kids, to be able to eat lunch outside so that they didn't have to all be packed into the cafeteria. Well, that's a cute concept. First school I went to visit, they said, yes, this is where our outdoor dining would be if we had the resources to do it.
Wow. So
this is where we'd like to have an outdoor classroom if we have the resources to do it. So my point is, a lot of these things that they're talking about mitigation strategies and how their plan has been a model, understand those words.
Right.
They're not saying that their numbers have shown their plan as a model. They're not saying that their implementation has been shown to be a model. They're saying their plan, the smoke and mirror words they put on paper,
Right.
is a model, but it is a model that they're not using.
Right. Right.
That's a bait and switch.
It looks good on paper.
Yes, but the fact that you are saying these things, and you know you've got classrooms where, because you won't give the resources to get enough teachers, you've got classes that are between 27 and 31 students. You know there's no social distance unless they expanded the walls. You know there's no social distancing going on in those classrooms.
Right.
You know, and if you've got all those students in those classrooms that are then trying to get into the same lunch periods because you haven't extended the day, the school time. So, and when there's no outdoor lunch available, that means regardless of what your plan says, your model plan says, your actuality and implementation is far from what that model plan says.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Sad.
They're saying the right things.
Yep.
They've outlined the correct things in their plan. They're just not doing them.
They're not implementing them. Yeah.
No, they're not. And that's problematic. And until we can address that, nothing much else is going to change. Right. I know that we have more time here, and this hearing seems to be really continuing on. I can raise up the volume on it a little bit more, unless you want to talk more about the policy and about the plan that the district has and where we should go. What would you ladies prefer?
I want to hear what they're saying, even though I know they're not.
I want to hear too.
Okay, well, let's get that going. Hold on, here we go.
Far more robust, centralized response to that.
And thank you, Councilman Cohen, for asking that question. I would say, as a father of two little boys, we know that washing hands is important, and we think about the mask, but also keeping our hands clean is very important in terms of helping to prevent the spread of the pandemic. So glad you asked that. Just want to note for the record, for our grade committee staff, Marguerite Curran, again, Councilmember Porter's request for data from the school system is a follow-up. And at this point, turn the chair duties over to Councilmember Porter.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Bullock. So next, I'm going to ask questions to Councilmember Glover. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Santalisa and the board for coming on. My question is, given that GO students and grade changes have been a part of...
Do you speak a little louder? We can't hear you.
I apologize. Let me turn my volume up a little bit. It was to say that given that GO students and the grades have been a part of the culture here in Baltimore City since I was even a child, what are the steps that you're taking to change the culture? What are you doing as the CEO or the board to hold like principals, administrators, and teachers to integrity and reporting the attendance and the grades in a process of using attendance, grades, and texting metrics, helping hinder the performance of our educators as it pertains to making sure our students have mastered the fundamentals of learning?
Okay, and Councilman, please let me know if I don't answer both parts of your question. The first part, I think I understood. The second part, I'll let you tell me whether I did or did not understand it. So with regards to the first part of the question, what we have done to ensure the integrity of our attendance and our grading is one, we have made sure that we have system-wide regular training for all those responsible for grading, for school leaders, so that there's no confusion about what is an acceptable grading policy or grading practice, because there are times where grades get adjusted, and that's true for every school district or school that I've worked in, be it in Baltimore or another school district. So we've done that training because we wanted to make sure that everyone was clear. I'd say the second thing that we've done is we've put protocols in with regards to how we review those records, how we verify for graduation. The State Department of Education also has a process that is separate from Baltimore City that also verifies those same instances. And I would say, Councilman, what we've done is we have gone deep with allegations when they arise. And I think we have demonstrated that those folks, when they are found out, it sends the signal that it's not tolerated. We work with authorities when necessary to pursue those who deliberately come out to mislead the public, mislead families, and most importantly, to mislead children about their progress. The culture, I've said it before, and I will say it again, Councilman, that I can't be people's personal ethical guide. Individuals, whether they be in government or in a school system, make individual ethical choices every single day. But what we do is we create a culture where we say that action's not tolerated, and where we do put the time in to make sure that folks are trained, that folks know what the proper way to count students, to assign grades are, and where there is a transgression in those areas, we pursue. And I think it's a combination of support, a combination of accountability, and a combination of clarity of what is acceptable and what is not, and following through on that. Now, your second question, you might need to clarify for me again.
So the second question was just, are we like helping or hindering like the performance of our frontline educators as it pertains to making sure that students master the fundamentals of learning? I mean, we're at times we're not having out, due to the pandemic. I know we had some situations and there have been some challenging situations, but due to the pandemic, I just find that learning, like virtual learning for so many kids has just not been there. It's been hard. It's been hard even for the parents. So my question is like kind of what are we doing to make sure that students really master the fundamentals of learning from those educators that are giving those lessons, virtually?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, Councilman, and if Chief Dabrowski would like to add, she's certainly welcome to, but one of the things I would say on that, Councilman, is part of why we pushed early on to get students back into schools who learn best in a classroom setting. I was at Carver High School this week, and I met a group of teachers and teacher leaders. I think I was on the 3rd floor. And one of the things they said to me was, Dr. S., it is good to be back because we didn't like virtual learning either. And so one of the reasons why opening safely and getting young people back and educators back where they can be more successful was a priority. The other piece is within our student learning plans. It's part of why you heard references to tutoring. You heard references to where we saw success was when we matched tutors who could simultaneously mentor. Like more of our tutors actually looked like the students they were tutoring. We had local college students from places like Morgan who were joining with us in that effort. What that enabled us to do was to make faster ground. And so then the question becomes, how do we make sure that we have access to that and those kinds of supports for all families? But Dr. Dabrowski, did you want to add anything?
Sure. The piece I just want to add is that I think the piece around virtual learning is spot on. Most of our students are best served in person. We did, however, recognize there were a small group of students who actually did quite well, and that's what's represented in our virtual learning program. So I do want to name that out as a distinct space where, as part of our commitment to reimagine, the virtual learning program serves as a space for us to be innovative and responsive to a group of students who have actually done quite well in that space. And what can we learn from that going forward to inform all of our work across virtual offerings? But I think, as Dr. Santelises has said, when I'm out visiting schools right now, the energy, the conversations between students that are happening in classrooms right now, we should never underestimate the power of in-person learning. And I think we're seeing that right now for our young people who've come back. And I would say we're seeing also in our teachers who are so excited to be back with their students in person.
Thank you. And to go over to my second question, first of all, Dr. Santeliza, thank you for coming over to my district to visit Uncle T. He do have a very, very important role here in our neighborhood when it comes to helping our young people with mental health challenges and things of that nature. So thank you for coming over and visiting his center. I just want to go to say, also noted in the recovery plan was teachers asking for expanded mental health support for the staff. Being a teacher in Baltimore, at times can be very challenging, and dealing with the challenging times that we have right now. But my ask is, what are you doing to boost the morale amongst the staff to invest in their mental health and encourage retention? I see a lot of these things as the key to providing quality education and increasing the integrity in reporting.
No, and again, Councilman, I think it's a great question, and one, that we have learned much from and continue to learn directly from teachers. I think, some of what we've cited before is, last summer was the first time that we had extensive time during the professional development schedule for teachers to be able to focus on their own mental health. I remember last June, we had a Juneteenth session that was packed out from teachers who just wanted space to be able to celebrate, to share in ways that feed people's soul and feed people's spirit. I think the other piece does go to how do we have, and I don't know if Chief Grant Skinner is on tonight, but I will say we've also tried to expand the peer groups that we have for teachers. We found that opportunity culture. We have a former Teacher of the Year, LaQuisha Hall, who works with opportunity culture, coaching, supporting other teachers. Sydney Thomas, this year's Teacher of the Year, also works in an opportunity culture school. And one of the things that we are seeing in that data is that when teachers are working to support other teachers through this, it's better support than they could get from me, right? They actually learn more when they have other teachers to share with, where they feel like they don't have the burden of doing everything on them, and that actually takes away or helps to mitigate some of the stress. I don't know, Chief Grant Skinner, if you want to talk about some of the mental health supports for teachers that we have in place.
Sure, thanks, Dr. Santeliza. So what I would add to what you shared is that we have an employee wellness program in city schools that we launched a couple of years ago in partnership with our union partners called Be Well. And it is brings together with a couple of wellness educators who are fully dedicated to this task within the district to bringing together and coordinating the range of supports we have for our employees' health and wellness. And that includes mental health supports that are available within our health programs, our employee assistance program, which provides free, confidential support for staff members all across the district who need support with mental health, but also a range of other things. And we've expanded other offerings that are available to our staff through this program, from things like physical health and fitness and mental health and financial literacy and a whole other range of things, so that our staff members have access to sort of more on-demand options available to them for whatever they may be dealing with at work and at home.
Thank you. And I'll be a good steward of time. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Council Glover. I believe, Mr. Chair, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, this is for Madam CEO. I know they were talking about COVID and protocols, and I just wonder, can you explain to that process? Because I did mention that I have gotten some phone calls about at some of the schools, they felt like the school wasn't doing the CDC guidelines, and I want to know if that happens, what is the process so they can report that? Because that's really important.
No, you're right, Councilman Stokes. It is important, and like I said, there's a variety of channels. Some even do reach me and I follow up on those. The first piece, what I will do is ask Chief Perkins Cohen to speak to that, and then I think Chief Davis should speak to what the school level accountability is for when CDC guidelines are not in place and where families can go. In addition to, of course, there's always my ombudsman who does take concerns from families. But if we could start with Chief Perkins Cohen and then Chief Davis, if you could speak to the school level accountability after that, please.
So, ladies, I'm going to have to close out because I have a show coming up.
Okay.
Your, like some parting thoughts with you two, because I want to know, like, if you learned anything from this, because I didn't.
Well, I learned that they're very good at stagecraft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the show was very, very well put together.
Yeah.
And if you looked at it at the surface and listened at the surface, you would have thought the district had it going on.
You know, I was thinking that. I said, if I did not live in Baltimore, I would be thinking this would be a great place to put my child in for school.
Mm-hmm. You would think it.
Mm-hmm.
Until you really, really paid attention to what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
I thank you for making this opportunity for us to do this tonight.
You are welcome. You are welcome.
My organization, UEI, Urban Engagement Initiative, is going to continue to stay active in the schools and follow up with the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a parent or a guardian, may I give a phone number
Sure.
to call?
I'll put it down here too.
Okay, it's 240-242. Oh, great. 5467.
Okay, 5467.
Yes.
So 240-242-5467.
Yes.
Now, what is this number again?
It's to Urban Engagement Initiative,
Okay.
our nonprofit that's been the driving force behind what I'm doing to kind of fight and hold people's feet to the fire on education in the city.
Okay.
So if you're a parent, you've had problems with the district, you have questions, your concerns that are not being addressed, you want to be more active, you want to organize other parents, you want somebody to come do a pop-up visit at your child's school, call us. Leave a message, and we will get right back to you. 9 times out of 10, it'll be me that actually calls folks back.
Wow.
Thank you so much for that information, Pastor. I have not heard them say not one time, why so many schools closed? And they wonder why the classes are overcrowded. I asked that question. Why are so many schools overcrowded? Because the schools you still got schools sitting there, just grass growing over top of them, not doing anything. The school at Winston Middle School, they formally closed their school down because it's so old, but then they had children that had so many problems. For instance, if these children had problems in, let's say, Poly, let's say, Merrill High School. So if they were problem kids, all of those children into Winston Middle School all the time. That was fighting all the time. That baby broke to school. So they put all of them children Winston Middle School. Why are we still having this routine over and over again?
You're breaking up, Van. You're breaking up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I say they spoke very well tonight at the press conference, and everything they had spoken about is not accurate. I have not seen it. And I'm a parent that's on top, and I stay on top of things. Again, I have nieces and nephews in school. I'm raising a 14-year-old, brilliant kid because one of the ladies said boy. I had a problem with that. Boy, they are young men in school.
I hear you.
I thank you, ladies. We did Pastor, you educated me tonight to open my eyes and lift eyebrows up, explain it to me more so what they were saying, because they can talk so highly educated but not breaking it down for the parents to understand, you using these big large words as if we don't understand.
Exactly, and that's the point. because you're not going to want to ask questions to make it clear that you don't understand.
Yeah.
But if they use a certain vernacular
Mm-hmm.
and phrasing, they know you won't understand, and it'll sound real good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But again, ladies, I thank you for this opportunity to do this. Lady J, I will keep you informed on what we're doing and where.
Please.
Miss Van, if you want to talk more, you have the number. Message me. Do whatever way you want.
Okay.
We all got to work together to get this thing going the right way.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You ladies have a great night.
You
as
too.
well.
All right.
Thank God.
All right. Bye-bye.